Day one of draft coverage we have completed, but now we move on to day two, rounds 2 and 3 on the board. A lot happened last night, Jeff, in the draft. Welcome into Hot Topics here with PubSportsRadio.com. He's Jeff Nadeau. I'm Donnie Seymour. A lot to go over, as I just stated, Jeff. Some interesting moves on night one, but night two, hey, look, the props still roll through. There are a lot of good players here and a lot of value, Jeff, still on the boards for rounds 2 and 3.
Yeah, plenty of value. A lot of good players still out there. A lot of guys that had first-round grades, which we'll see. The second round over the years, Donnie's produced some really good football players. You can get even in round 3. There's plenty of talent out there.
No, absolutely. You're going to start to see some of these safeties move, some of these cornerbacks that didn't go in the first round. They'll still be available. But also, let's keep in mind, one running back did go, and that went number 32 overall to the Chiefs, which was the kid out of LSU. And now you still have some guys on the board. DeAndre Swift's going to be on the board. J.K. Dobbins on the board. You'll see some running backs moved on day 2 here in the draft as well.
Yeah, I think you could see a couple. Obviously, DeAndre Swift as well, as far as the ones you mentioned. Also, I wasn't necessarily surprised to see Edwards-Helaire go. A lot of people kind of forgot about him. They're kind of worried about the big names and Taylor and Swift. But we saw, obviously, last year, he was kind of the unsung hero of that offense. Kind of was always there to kind of bail them out when Burrow was having the little trouble that he did have. Good pick for them. I thought they'd go defense, but again, as we know, Donnie, and why I respect the Chiefs and Andy Reid, you can never have enough playmakers. I mean, I often wish, my team had that thought process, but that's a discussion for another video. But yeah, plenty of talent at every position.
No, I did like that move by Andy Reid because that's a look. You're Super Bowl champions. You can afford a luxury pick in that spot to get another playmaker for your all-world quarterback. And the reason why I did like it also, let's keep in mind, imagine a frontline running back. Like they have some nice running backs on the roster now, but when they had Kareem Hunt, what a formidable guy! And this guy can catch passes out of the backfield, make people miss, and Jeff also be 1,000-yard runner on the ground.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And that's, as you said, that's the great thing about being, a team that has a Super Bowl trophy. You can go out and you don't necessarily have to address need. You can address depth. You can address, playmaking ability. So yeah, very good selection by them.
Jeff, heading into round 2. Now, we talked about round 1 being the round of the wide receiver, and a lot of those wide receivers went. But I got to tell you, again, we talked for months of how deep this draft is at wide receiver. Let's focus on that maybe for rounds 2 and 3, because looking on the board, there is still top-level talent at the wide receiver position that you can get access to.
Yeah, one that I'm looking at, Donnie, next receiver picked, Michael Pittman Jr. plus 450. I think he makes a lot of sense to the Indianapolis Colts. If you read into some of the things they're looking to address, obviously, Donnie, there's not a huge amount of kind of height and going up and getting the football on that team. I think it's important to add that. If you look at some of the quotes coming out of Indy, they talk about giving, a chance to go up and make plays down the field. I like Pittman. I mean, big kid, 6'4", 225. He's going to go up and grab the football. I remember last year against Utah, he had an unbelievable game at the receiver position. Also a guy, Donnie, that, magnet hands. We've talked about that with other guys, but you look at catchable targets. He had just 5 drops in his season last year. So he's a guy that's really a guy that can grab the football. He's going to go up and get it. And I think he makes a lot of sense for the Colts. I think he's a guy, I kind of had him slated early in the second round. I think T. Higgins, you just continue to see him drop. I don't really understand that. I think Michael Pittman is probably the guy that's wildly at the top of the Colts draft board.
Now, usually on day 2, which I love the way to do the draft, Jeff. I got to be honest. It's not squelched into 1 day or 2 days where you got to get 1, 2, and a first round, second round in, then just have a splurge on the second day. I love the fact that teams get to rebuild overnight, restock their draft board, certainly if they want to make trades, but usually that creates a run on certain positions. What's the first run on positions, Jeff, do you think we'll see here in the second round?
Well, I think we're going to see Yeah, that's such a good question because there's so many deep positions in this draft. I mean, there's still a lot of. I mean, Grant Delpit's still on the board. Xavier McKinney's still on the board. You look at the corner position. Christian Fulton's still there. Trevon Diggs didn't get drafted. Antoine Winfield, the safety. Jalen Johnson, cornerback out of Utah. I think you're going to see a run on defensive backs here pretty early. I mean, there's a lot of really good players at that position still on the board, and you have a need. I mean, you look at Carolina. I think they have a need for a defensive back. You look at a team we just talked about, the Colts. I think they have probably a need to strengthen in that secondary. I think that's a position. The Bears, maybe they go after a safety. There's a lot, and the good thing about Indianapolis, Donnie, they have 2 picks within the top 11 picks. So the first 11 picks, they have 2 picks. So I think they set themselves up to maybe go how Minnesota did. Minnesota took a corner and a receiver. I think they could do that. Maybe Michael Pittman and maybe a guy like Jalen Johnson or one of the safeties.
No, it's a good point you bring up because when you take a look at the Colts, let's not forget, yes, they didn't have a first-round pick, but damn, they traded it away and got a really good defensive lineman, so they can add some depth and talent here. I do agree, getting some weapons for Phillip Rivers is going to be of the top shelf agreement. Go ahead.
Right, because one thing about Rivers, he in most of his career, if you read into some of the things he talks about he loves these guys that can go down the field and catch the football and make plays. So I think Pittman really kind of fits what I think they want to do there. Pittman is a Cortland Sutton type of player. That's kind of what he is. I also, Donnie, you look at the Colts, you lose Pierre Desir. So, I mean, all of a sudden, you got to go out and get a safety, don't you?
Yeah, no, yeah, or a cornerback. But the good part about that is they had a surefire pick, obviously trading for the defensive tackle from the 49ers, which is awesome because you shore up the frontline defense. Now you can just stack and get some of these guys that maybe you can pick through and certainly add to the team because the Colts, look, I didn't agree with the Colts move to get Phillip Rivers because I don't think he has much left in the tank. But outside of that, Jeff, the semblance of a good football team is there. By the way, starting at the top of the second round, obviously we know the first team that's going to be on the board, the Bengals, once again, went Joe Burrow with the #1 overall pick. Now round 2. If I ask you and put you on the hot seat, Jeff, who do the Bengals go right off the top?
Yeah, I would probably go Josh Jones here out of Houston, offensive tackle. Yeah, they need to. Danny, what's been the one knock? Well, not the one knock, but what's been a knock on them the last couple of years? I mean, Andy Dalton and the other quarterbacks they had just continue to get ravaged. I mean, they had nothing on that offensive line. Look, you see teams. You got to go out and protect your quarterback. We saw the Bucks do that. We saw the Jets do that. This is a kid, Josh Jones. I mean, he is a massive kid. 6'5", 320, 24 reps, Donnie. Big kid, gigantic kid. People have related him. I don't know if you remember, Donnie, Bobby Massey. He played for the Vikings years ago. He got the long frame, just a good offensive tackle. I had him in the top 20. I thought he was a top 20 pick. So I think he's a guy that I would target right out of the gate. You got to go and get some protection for your young prize at quarterback.
How about some props on the board here, Jeff, for rounds 2 and 3 today? What are you sinking your teeth into?
Yeah, I already bet this. You're laying a big price here, but I think it's pretty strong. Cole Kmet under the 18th and a half pick. So basically he's got to go within 18 picks. Again, I'll keep saying this. I think Cole Kmet makes a lot of sense to the New England Patriots. If you want a tight end, Donnie, you're not going to generally take it in the first round. I know, obviously it didn't happen this year. I think there's a lot of teams out there could benefit from his ability to block. He's really kind of the all-purpose type of tight end. And we've seen how the tight end has become such an important position in the NFL. Again, I think he makes sense to the New England Patriots, maybe Houston. I could see a lot of different spots for Cole Kmet. I'm willing to think he goes within the first 18 picks. I thought he was a first-round pick, arguably. I think he could find his way in. I also, as I said, I think Michael Pittman, first receiver taken, plus 450, makes a ton of sense as well. We're still kind of seeing the props trickle out, Donnie. A lot of the time on round 2 and 3, they wait kind of until the day of to put them out. So yeah, I'll continue to kind of stay with that. Next safety picked, I think Xavier McKinney has got to be the pick there. Again, another surprise. I thought he would be a kind of a top 25 pick. There was some reaches, Donnie. I mean, Damon Arnett, cornerback in the first round. You always
that's a
see
Raiders move. Yeah,
yeah, you always see that pick that you kind of look at and say, what? I mean, on what planet was he a top a pick? Jordan, the pick that Seattle Seahawks made, I thought that
the
was a little
linebacker
bit,
from Texas Tech.
Jordan
Yeah.
Brooks. I thought that was a little bit of a reach as well. So yeah, you're seeing teams that will make reaches and guys that don't end up getting drafted in the first round. You look at it and say, wow, how did that not happen? McKinney, I would think, is the first safety off the board as well. So the favorite would be Komet. I think he goes out pretty early.
You know, it's funny because I always joke around in the draft, and we'll get to we think the Eagles should pick at 53 in just a moment, Jeff. But I put it on Twitter just about every single year we do the draft. And I honestly think it's true because I get a lot of, no, that's not correct. If you gave the fan bases, Jeff, the first round draft pick for the team, forget about 2nd through 7th, just the first round pick, I honestly think the fans would draft better than the front offices because they're not paralyzed by analysis.
Yeah, I mean, we see teams, they just try to outsmart themselves too much. I mean, I talked last night, Donnie, about the Eagles and their inability to find a receiver. It's really maddening, man. I mean, and Donnie, I'm being 100% serious here. You got to go back to the mid 80s. Well, I don't even know who besides Macklin and Jackson. When is this team hit on a receiver? Seriously. I mean, you're older than me. Maybe you can give me somebody.
Yeah, they haven't taken too many first round wide receivers, but they're usually like middling, 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round.
But in general,
just average guys like the Jason Avants of the world, the Reggie Browns of the world. We've lived through all of those guys.
Yeah, the talent scouting on receivers has been incredibly bad. It's wild. But yeah, you have teams that you kind of wish they would just listen to their fans sometimes because, as you said, I mean, it seems like the fans understand, to look past the smoke screens and sometimes just going out and getting the best player available. That's
because it comes back to the full notion because we'll get into the Eagles pick in just a second again. But when you look at the Eagles taking Rager, he's a really good football player. Nobody's questioning saying that's a bust pick. He's going to stink. I actually think he's going to be a pretty good one. But when you look at guys that should just go there, 111 catches, Jeff, 1,500 yards and 18 touchdowns in the toughest conference in football, because the fans look at this and be like, the fans don't take the bustability player and try to outsmart themselves. If you went last night with Jefferson, everybody would have been happy. And what would you have said, Jeff, in 2 to 3 years down the road, if Jefferson was just your average wide receiver, say, hey, that was the right pick. That's who they're going to go to, because the upside and the ceiling is better on Rieger to me than Jefferson is. But you're going to get a really good football player to Jefferson. That's the guy you should have went with, is with my prognosis.
Yeah, I mean, the pick itself, I thought, was poor. I didn't think Jalen Reagor should have been picked over Justin Jefferson. But the pick more for me was the fact that you, as usual, even if you took Jefferson, you're picking the 4th or 5th best receiver. At what point do they say and admit we're going to go up and get the best player available? And the fact that you allowed a guy like CeeDee Lamb, who was there for the taking, to go to your rival was a concern. Look, Donnie, this team, you got to go out and address the big receiver. I don't understand. Like, they keep taking these guys that are the 3rd and 4th and 5th best options. I'm just kind of sick of it. But yeah, I guess we'll see.
53 today, Jeff. 53 is on the board today, right? The Philadelphia Eagles are there. Who are we taking, or who you think is going to be in that range once we get to that pick? Who's going to be, one of those guys we should take?
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways they can go. I mean, obviously, I think linebacker. Donnie, I'll tell you right now, I would have been happy with Kenneth Murray last night at the linebacker position at 21. I was pretty high on him. I think you've got to address that. We know, though, they don't seem to care much about receiver or linebackers. I would probably say safety or corner, frankly. I think they need a nickel corner. I don't or corner in general. I think now that you've moved Jalen Mills out, you've got a lot of question marks. And I know people are going to say, well, do we really need another corner? This team, another position they've struck out a lot at. I like a Meek Robertson, Donnie. I'll continue to say that. I think he is a terrific player. He reminds me of the Honey Badger. I'm serious. I mean, he is a big-time hitter. He's a kid that can go up and just beat you. He can grab the football. And, Donnie, you are a Pro Football Focus guy, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much.
Go look at corner rankings last year in Pro Football Focus. Go see who's up at the top in most categories. Meek Robertson. He's 5'8", and I know that will be something that people won't like, but he's a guy that's not scared of big receivers. He will go up and grab it. What do you think about a corner, Donnie?
I don't mind getting a cornerback, but I think there's a little bit of a logjam for the Eagles on the young guys they want to see turn out. I've always been a big safety guy. Like if you have an impact safety, which we've seen one of the best of all time to do it, Brian Dawkins, that overall experience, especially even with Malcolm Jenkins, Jeff, who's now moved on to the New Orleans Saints. I just think they're a little devoid of an actual talented impact playmaker back there. Like Grant Delpit's listed here on ESPN as the third best, safety still left on the board. Xavier McKinney, Antoine Winfield Jr. Does Delpit have any chance to hang around, or can the Eagles maybe move up? Because again, moving up in the first round is a lot more expensive than moving up in the second round for some of these teams.
Yeah, I don't think Grant Delpit would be there at 53. I don't know if he'll get past the 42, 43. Mm-hmm. I think the Cleveland Browns could be a team that like him. Yeah, I don't think if you want a McKinney, Winfield, Delpit, and Donnie, this is your issue here. Mm-hmm. We're constantly settling. Go up and get the best player for once, man. I mean, I don't it kind of is irritating to me, man. And that's kind of my knock on this is why you make the playoffs and lose in the first round. It's like, well, now
here's the part of it, because a lot of corrections can be made, Jeff, in the second round. So, I mean, look, again, we always bring it back to the Eagles because we're Eagle fans. If you get a really good player at 53, you say, okay, look, I like the way we're going here. But if this is one of those picks, Jeff, at 53, we scratch our head and get a backup guard, then you're saying, like, why didn't we give up 53 and move up to get CeeDee Lamb? Because that's probably what it was going to take. So I'm going to hold out to see what the Eagles do at 53 today before I actually make a judgment on the first and second pick, because I didn't want them to give up the second round because there's so much good talent still left in the second round. But it matters who they actually pick in the second round for me to make that opinion.
Yeah, it's arguably as important as the first round.
Correct.
I mean, I think you're onto something here. I mean, and this is where, like I said, I mean, this is a big draft for Carson Wentz and for this team. I mean, you're starting to see, Donnie, if you want to start continuously winning, I mean, guys are getting older. Fletcher Cox is a year older. Zach Ertz is a year older. You got to start hitting.
Alshon and Djax are both in their 30s, because I don't agree with taking a wide receiver at 53 here, but there's something to be said about, look, if you add a guy who has let's just say for some odd reason.
I got to tell you, if T. Higgins is there.
That's correct. If T. Higgins falls to 53, you're just supposed to take value at that point. It's why, with the Cowboys, where they get CeeDee Lamb, it's not so much that they really needed defensive help in the worst way. They didn't need a wide receiver, but when talent falls to you, you take it and then you deal with it later, because that's the right move to do.
Yeah, I think if T. Higgins is there, I mean, I love Chase Claypool. I'm a big Chase Claypool guy. If they go out and get Higgins or Claypool, I'll be okay. I wouldn't be as mad as I am. I'm just pissed off that we're getting gimmick guys, Donnie. We're getting high bust potential guys. You know what, Donnie? And you know what I mean? You know what I'm serious about? You know who this kid reminds me of? They got
who?
Josh Huff. That's who he reminds me of.
Yeah, stature-wise, I mean, his upside is really good, but you don't do upside in the first round.
They think he's kind of like a Darren Sproles type, like not as small, and like they're going to use him like that.
He's got a 42. I mean, his measurables are way better than Jefferson, but you still have to put it together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I think people have to remember, like, he was like, there's a play people are retweeting where he's twisting and turning and doing all these things. That's not going to happen in the NFL. I hate to tell you. I mean, some of that stuff. And look, his quarterback play wasn't great. I like Max Duggan. A lot of people don't. We'll see. I just see Josh Huff, and I hope I'm wrong, and he's, Tyreek Hill type. But,
I think he's going to be a good football player, but everybody, look, the Eagles got on the board at 21. I'm tweeting it out 5 picks ahead of time and go, look, Jefferson might be on the board, and he's not. And you know what the worst part about the pick was? And I hope I'm wrong. Like, I hope Rieger turns out to be way better than Justin Jefferson. Jeff, they cut to Justin Jefferson. He's got the phone in his ear.
I know.
And he
That's the thing.
I couldn't believe it.
But Donnie, I think the big thing people are missing, Eagle fans are missing here is, even if you got Jefferson, you're still getting the fourth best receiver in this draft. You had the opportunity.
Yeah, but you can't really put it that way, because what was the capital to get above it? Like, it's easy to say we could have got up there, but what happens if they say we want your number one next year to move up 7 spots?
Let me tell you something. Atlanta, you could have traded to
what Atlanta. What if they asked for your next year's number one to come up and get that pick?
Well, look, I don't know, but I'm willing to think they would have, because the guy they wanted and the guy they took would have been AJ Terrell would have been there.
Yeah.
Same with the Raiders or whoever. I don't know. They claim they try to move up, and it's always they claim to do it. They never
And
find
we
a way
had
to
this
do
guy
it.
the whole time. And my favorite draft analysis is, Jeff, we didn't get him there. There were so many teams clamoring to get him.
Oh yeah, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
That's GM speak. That's trying to justify the pick because we had him so high, even though other people didn't. Listen, I'm telling you, I see Josh huffing this guy. So.
And also just the one last final point on it. The reason why it's interesting because when the fan base goes, oh my God, I can't believe he did that. But the worst part is, Jeff, the Minnesota Vikings right behind the Eagles fired that pick in, and it was for Jefferson. That raises your eye because the Vikings were already dead set on, let's just say, like a cornerback or a safety, and maybe Jefferson goes 2 or 3 spots past. Like, oh, maybe there wasn't a big clamor. But the fact that the Vikings drilled him right after the Eagles really rubs a little bit of salt in there too.
They're a team that got better. They got really improved last night, taking Jefferson. And then they take Jeff Gladney, a guy that is from TCU as well. I had him in the first round. I liked their draft. I think it was compact, quick, and they did a nice job in a couple of picks.
There it is. Your hot topic of the day, draft. It's day 2 tonight. Rounds 2 and 3 should be a lot smoother operation than, taking 15 to 20 minutes, it seemed like, between picks on night 1. But we'll have some fun with that and certainly be able to put a recap on the draft when we get back to Hot Topics on Monday right here at pubsportsradio.com. He's Jeff Nadeau. I'm Donnie Seymour. Tune in Monday when we recap the draft. Sure to have some rants.